Hi, folks. Steve here, and we're eating and drinking men and women in Ang Lee's film, Taiwanese film, Eat, Drink, Man, Woman, which is a terrific movie. And what's really interesting about it is a lot of the film is about eating and cooking. Certainly cooking. There's some really great cooking scenes, and this film is regarded as one of the great cooking movies. And it's really just about the precision and the care that goes into the cooking. And when we're thinking of Stephen Teo and his whole idea of the Asian experience and how the Asian experience, um, comes through in particular ways, something of the Asian experience that is really being, can I say, fetishized in this film is the whole idea of food and food preparation. And there's a whole lot of binaries being kind of the opposite of, um, the great way that, although kind of the great myth around Asian cooking, where it's done in a particular way with great care and love. And that's sort of juxtaposed against kind of a more Western, redundant way of food, where food is nothing more than to kind of fill you up. Anyway, I'll talk more about the title in a couple of seconds because it's kind of interesting. The title and the sort of the meaning of the title and actually what's going on with the title. All right, so this is it's a comedy drama, and I'll be interested to know kind of what you make of its comedy and its drama. I guess it's melodrama. It's a family melodrama to some degrees, and it's really about the lives and loves of the members of a particular family. But before I get on to the film, I'd just like to say a couple of things about Ang Lee. And generally, an Asian cinema's course, right? The go-to film, Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon. There aren't a lot of courses that don't have Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon embedded somewhere in the syllabus. And the reason for that is Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon is a fascinating movie through the way that he's using different actors from all around Asia. Different accents are heard, different languages are used, different genres are kind of meshed together. And for a while, it was seen as like the kind of, a very accessible Asian film by the West, right? And it was a hugely successful film in the West. And I'd like to say it kind of launched Ang Lee's career in the West, or certainly in Hollywood, but that's really not the case. And if you actually look at his filmography here, you will see Eat, Drink, Man, Woman is his third film, which is kind of part of this this trilogy of family and eating and things like that. But after Eat, Drink, Man, Woman, which was a very successful film for him, and he's done numerously successful films, and it's a terrific filmography, really, because Ang Lee has continued to make really great cinema over many years and work in really different sorts of genres on different sorts of films, and he seems to be able to work in Hollywood and make kind of American movies really well, and he can do the same thing in Asia. And I think what sort of ties all of his films together is a real sensitivity to the context of what's going on with the characters. And you've got that in like Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, certainly in something like Brokeback Mountain, Lust Caution. It's there, not that Lust Caution is a Hollywood movie, but Life of Pi, Hulk with Eric Banner, and then he worked with Nicole Kidman in Brokeback Mountain, our Nicole. So he's working with our lot quite a bit. He seems to like Australian actors, but he's really good at sort of bringing out this kind of sensitivity of his characters, and I think in a way that often American directors and also Australian directors don't do, which is why his films are so interesting and fascinating. Like even the Ice Storm, Ride with the Devil is an unbelievably powerful film. There's a kind of a massacre scene that happens, a western, and they kind of gang ride into town and really just cause havoc, and it's an amazing sequence. And Sense and Sensibility, like who would have thought? Well, of course, I would have thought he would have done that because again, it's about sensitivity and sensibility, and sensibility. And more recently, Life of Pi was very good. Billy Lynn's Long Halftime Walk, I'm still scratching my head over. I'm not really sure whether it worked or what he was actually trying to do. Anyway, I'll leave it there, but pretty good filmography. And you may be asking yourself, but Steve, if everybody else is putting Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon into their syllabus in Asian cinemas, why aren't you? What's wrong with you? Well, there's quite a lot, but I won't go into those things right now. Maybe in future lectures I will. I think the thing about Eat, Drink, Man, Woman, and the thing about all of Ang Lee's films, it's not like he was making Asian movies and then he went to America and he was making American movies. What he was doing was he's always been interested in strong Western influences, kind of there seducing the characters, influencing the characters, and the characters just being part of this global world and this globalization. And if you have a look at the reading for this week, the reading is very much about the globalization of Ang Lee, and it actually talks about all of his films being global in their perspectives. Here you're looking at a couple of the promotional posters, and one is the one that was used in Australia, which has the three daughters lying down, looking. They're looking kind of hungry. I guess they're looking hungry. I don't really know what that look is. Well, anyway, they look at peace with the world, and they've got pretty good looking food on those plates, which sort of says what this film is really about. And the quote used on the promotional poster: "It's hard to tell where sex stops and food begins." And I think that might kind of misguide to some degree what this film is. This film isn't some sort of sex romp with some food. But it is very much about this kind of, this love for food and this love for life and this love for living, which again comes into the title. And so that's your Western poster, and you've got your Eastern poster on the other side, which has the dad holding his daughter's hands, and it seems more. There's more sensitivity, it seems, going on in that poster, and it's white as opposed to red in one poster. Anyway, make of those posters what you will. I don't really think any of them are that good. I'll be honest with you. I'm just sitting here. I'm really scratching my head trying to find anything of interest to say. Even though on the poster it's interesting how you've got the Mandarin language and also the Western language together on the same poster. And the Eastern poster doesn't use any of that. Where you would, I guess what's interesting is that it makes it feel like it's a very Western movie. There's nothing really of kind of Asianness going on. I mean, obviously the three female actors on the screen are Asian, but that doesn't necessarily mean that the film is going to be Asian as in not American, if that makes sense. Anyway, we'll move on, shall we? So this is the kind of the opening shot of Eat, Drink, Man, Woman, which again is interesting because you've got an Eastern language, the writing over the screen, over the middle of the screen, and then down the bottom you've got the Western English in Eat, Drink, Man, Woman. And what you're looking at is this sort of chaotic peak hour traffic, and it kind of sets up a particular kind of Asian experience where you're not seeing, the Western road divided by lines and things like that. It's just everybody kind of, riding and holding onto their hats and hoping for the best. And I guess the question that I have is, what does this opening establish regarding an Asian experience? How do we know we're watching an Asian film? Now, we know we're watching an Asian film through the text on the screen, but also just looking at these characters and this world and this community. So we know we're in the city, right? Because it's peak hour, it's loud, there's this cacophony of noises coming from every direction, which, in and of itself is kind of interesting. And, interestingly, the film isn't really about... The film is very closed. It's a very kind of closed world, which makes you think, why open with this? And I think what Ang Lee is sort of establishing here is that you've got the bigger world and you've got the smaller world. And he's interested in the smaller world, the sensitiveness of what's going on actually behind the closed doors within this family and things like that. Okay. Now, the title is worth discussing, and I said here, experiencing Asia through lustful pleasure of indulgence and leisure, indulgence of food, and that actually has a lot to do with the title Eat, Drink, Man, Woman. Okay, now, so the title is a quote from the Book of Rites, and this is one of Confucian's classics, referring to the basic human desires and accepting them as natural. Right. The beginning of the quote reads as follows: "The things which men greatly desire are comprehended in meat and drink and sexual pleasure." Now that is a translation, and some translators or scholars have said, well, it's not the literal, it's an interpretation more than a direct literal translation. Others read the quote as, it's not living to eat, it's eating to live, if that makes sense, right? So you don't overindulge in things like food, but the film's sort of taken a different approach, kind of saying that life is about experiencing the good things, sexual pleasure, and indulging in drink and meat and food and things like this. And what you have in the opening sequence is this wonderful cooking scene where the dad is preparing Sunday lunch, which he'll do over and over in the film. Sunday lunch becomes a very big thing. But it's worth having a think about this title, Eat, Drink, Man, Woman, right? Because the title suggests a binary opposition, right? One thing contrasts another. It's not a film where everything flows together. It's a film where everything is getting pushed up against one another and each other. So eat, drink, right? Man, woman. And that's important to know. I think what's interesting about the film and what's clever about the film is it's not like the West is this evil other. It's the West is the West and it has an influence, but there are other things going on which is causing conflict as well in the story. Now, this is a quote by Whitney Crothers Dilly, who she's the reading for this week. She's the required reading for this week. And before I get on to I'll read the quote. Here's the quote. How the film opens, the viewer is treated... So this is the opening sequence I was talking about, which is this wonderful, wonderful sequence of the dad preparing this meal and the sort of the way and the precision and the time and the care that he goes into this, and watching him at work, you would be thinking to yourself, I want to eat his dinner. And something I should say is, obviously these people are meat eaters. And in today's world, where a lot of people aren't meat eaters and a lot of people are on, particular diets for various ethical and health reasons, it would be very easy to watch this film and kind of put our own judgments on the way that animals are kind of being sacrificed for the meal. But it's important to understand that what this is setting up is a particular way of living and a particular community, and animals are kind of there for the pleasure of humans. And now you can ethically be against that, but if these characters, say, didn't eat meat in fear that audience members were going to be put off or offended or something, I think that would be undermining the very community that's being represented here. I'm not sure if I'm making sense here, but I'm just saying that it's a world about people living in a particular way, and that's what's so interesting about this film, and it's what's so interesting about these cooking scenes. So, if you have ethical issues with cooking or food, I hope that you can watch this and understand why things are being represented in a particular way, and why it's giving you an experience that may not be your own experience of cooking and eating. Anyway, to the quote. As the film opens, the viewer is treated to the sights and sounds of all manner of traditional Chinese gourmet cooking, which presumably involves the use of certain tools, cooking techniques, and animal organs not found in the Western kitchen. This may provide a shock or at least a pleasurable voyeurism for the Western viewer. However, this is set against later semiotic signals that suggest the power and the reach of globalization. Specifically, the appearance of the Western fast food chain in which the two teenage friends work at in Taipei. With all of its Western accoutrements, such as the uniforms, burgers, shakes, fries, and so forth, this may also prove to be a shock for some Western viewers unused to seeing Asian faces in the uniforms of American franchises. Food in the film is totemistic, infused with significance and an intergenerational means of communication. And there's a line. I'm ending the quote now. Even though I'm going to quote the quote by ending the quote. The line which is spoken, which is used here to end this passage. We communicate through food, and I think that's really important in the way food is prepared as a form of, it's like a love letter almost to people. The time and the care that people take into not just the preparation, but the way that the family, they sit around a table and they, enjoy each other and enjoy each other's company. The food scene, so like every Sunday in the narrative, the family get together, and it becomes really important to the film because things are revealed on these Sunday food scenes, right? But the first cooking scene, which is juxtaposed by this sudden cut to you're at Wendy's, and it's like, it was this fast food restaurant, and it's loud, and it's noisy, and it's chaotic, and it's the complete opposite to the time and the care that this one person was taking in preparing his meal for his family, and the natural kind of cooking that he was doing, cooking things from the ground up. So I'm interested in those two scenes and how the film sets up those two scenes. So how do the two food scenes set up a binary for the film? And because what's going on that is you've got this juxtaposition across the film. And that opening kind of 5-10 minutes is really, really important to actually setting up the tone for the film. How is the West represented here? So in that Wendy's scene, how is the West actually being represented? As opposed to Taiwan. And how is Eastern food or Eastern culture represented as more traditional? Because if if you had to eat one of these meals, right, surely you would eat the Asian meal. If you're vegetarian, you may have some issue with it, but I still think you would rather be in that world than the chaos of the Wendy's world. And I think that's the point the film's trying to make, right? It's like, do you want to be part of a tradition, or do you want to be part of some crazy culture, which is the West? But it doesn't hate the West, because the characters really have a genuine love for the West. Okay, so this is a shot from one of the cooking scenes, and oh my goodness, look at that food! Look at that food, ladies and gentlemen. I mean, even if you're vegetarian, I know I'm harping on the vegetarian aspect, but I mean, I still think there will be enough on that table for you to enjoy. So we're in 1990s, we're in contemporary Taiwan, right? And the dad, it's Mr. Chu. So he's a master Chinese chef, and there's just great cooking scenes. There's great scenes. There's actually a great tracking shot when they're like following him through his kitchen, this industrial kitchen. It's a beautiful shot, and you'll probably know what it is when you see it. And I just think it shows the masterwork of Ang Lee. You know, the way that he can just bring real cinematic interest to all of the ways that he sets things up. You know, Ang Lee, there's a real beauty to the way he frames and shoots his scenes. And something, a couple of questions, you know, I'm kind of throwing at you is each dinner scene is different. You know, different things are revealed, different things happen. Things start to get very strained, right, from one scene to the next. And what I'm asking you is, how is each dinner scene different? Right? How is each dinner scene depicted differently? How do the characters develop and change through each of these scenes? So think about the characters. How is that character different from the last time we met them at the dinner table? And how does Ang Lee shoot or light these scenes differently? Which again, they look different. The camera moves differently, and of course, that allows the actors to play the scene differently. So what would seem as a very mundane thing, where they're back at the table, it seems completely different. In a way, this is a kind of a crazy jump, but something like Raging Bull, where every boxing scene, it looks completely different from the last scene. And, that tracking shot I was talking about through the kitchen, Scorsese actually uses a very similar tracking shot when Jake LaMotta is walking out for one of his fights. Anyway, enough of Martin Scorsese. What is the significance of the father losing his taste for food? So the father, Mr. Chow, he loses his taste for food. Oh no! This is the worst thing that could happen, ladies and gentlemen. He loses his taste for food. It's like a musician losing their hearing. Anyway, it's a disability because, it's a disability. I mean, he's a cook and he can't taste he's lost his taste. This is a big thing of the film. And how does the film treat this disability? Have a think about that when you're watching the film. Okay. How is the Chineseness emphasized? And, you've kind of got a binary. Interesting, in one of the scenes, so this is some dialogue from one of the scenes. Character's looking for a toy for his child back in America. And the dialogue, I always wanted to find something Chinese for him. So these two characters, they're in like a store, this sort of shopping store, big kind of Toys R Us kind of store, right? And he says, I'm looking for something Chinese. Now, by saying that, right, they're actively looking for something Chinese. The film is actively saying, hey, we will show you proper Chinese toy here, as opposed to the characters just doing it without even mentioning it. I mean, it seems very, very obvious and almost very forced in a particular way. But I think it's the point of the film. Like, it's actually saying, we are going to bring attention to particular Chinesenesses of culture and things like that through the food, through the toys and things like that. And So that, so the dialogue goes on. He's interested in Chinese culture. Right, and then she says, "I wish I can't believe that in a few short years my son is growing up to be an American. Sometimes I look at him and wonder if he's actually my son. He was raised in America and his mother doesn't mind." And then it kind of goes into more melodrama. His mother, how does she feel about you being away all the time? She's glad I'm not around. I think the only reason we're not divorced is that we're both too busy. That sounds so cynical, doesn't it? And anyway, I'll let that relationship develop its natural course across the film. I don't want to ruin that, but I guess we all see where this relationship's heading. But I mean, the point is that the characters are actually talking directly about the Asianness and things like that. Okay. So just to finish off, how are clear binaries established? So binary being an opposite of another, black, white, like dog, cat, food, water, even though there's a lot of water and food. So I don't really know how much of a binary that is. I suppose there's a binary. We'll say it's binary. What is the Asian cinema experience of the film? So think Stephen Teo. What is the Asian cinema experience? How does the film culturally and socially position itself? And think about who is the intended audience for this film. The argument with Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon is that it was an Asian film made for a Western market. That Asian audiences were not going to like this film. Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon. So it's kind of like a mashup of all these Asian myths and things going on for a Western audience. And that film was really criticised, actually, quite heavily when it came out in Asia. Now, the thing about this film is it's, obviously it's not in English. It's set in Taiwan. It's a different sort of Ang Lee film for a number of these reasons. And think about the intended audience. Is this audience intended for a Western audience or for an Eastern audience? When we're watching this film, are we watching an Asian experience for Asia? Or are we watching an Asian experience made kind of for Westerners? Have a think about that, and I'll be really interested to hear what you have to say about that in the classes. And just the final thing is, how do all the daughters represent particular Western aspects that challenge traditional Asian authenticity? So you got one daughter, Christian, right? And Christianity is part of Western colonization, blah, 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 right? Another works for Taiwanese Airlines, right? But the whole thing about her story is that the airlines are expanding into the West, which means she may end up actually leaving Taiwan and blah, blah, blah. Right. And then the other one works at Wendy's, which is very much an American, establishment. And when you're in that store, you kind of feel like you're in America because it feels like every other film or scene that has, a fast food joint where characters frequent and eat and indulge. All right, I'll leave it there. So this is Eat, Drink, Man, Woman. It's a terrific movie. I really like it a lot, and I'm really looking forward to hearing what you have to say about it. And it's funny, it's a comedy, and it's also a beautiful, beautiful looking film, and it's another film that I would not recommend to be seen on an empty stomach. It has great cooking scenes, and I look forward to watching it with you all. Bye for now.